What would you do if you saw someone struggling and you had nothing to give? What if a single moment of compassion could change the entire trajectory of your life? This is the story of Marcus Thompson, a single father fighting to survive in one of America's toughest cities, and an encounter that would alter everything. Marcus was 34 years old, but he looked closer to 50. The weight of life had a way of aging you faster than time ever could. He worked construction during the day, stocking shelves at a grocery store at night, and spent every remaining moment with his 8-year-old son, James. They lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Memphis, Tennessee, in a neighborhood where dreams went to die and hope was a luxury most people couldn't afford. It was a Thursday morning in late September when everything changed. Marcus had just finished his night shift at the grocery store and was driving through downtown Memphis on his way home. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He was exhausted, running on his 3rd cup of bitter convenience store coffee, thinking about how he could squeeze a few hours of sleep before he had to pick James up from school. He was stopped at a red light on Madison Avenue when he saw her. An elderly woman, probably in her 80s, stood on the curb across the street. She was small and frail, with white hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a purple cardigan despite the warm weather. She clutched a large purse to her chest and stared at the crosswalk with an expression of absolute terror. The light was about to change and cars were already revving their engines. Marcus watched as the woman stepped forward hesitantly. She was moving slowly, so slowly. Her cane tapped against the pavement with each careful step. She was only halfway across when the light turned green. Cars began to move. The first car honked loudly, making the woman jump. She froze in the middle of the street, panic flooding her face. Without thinking, Marcus threw his truck into park right there at the red light. He jumped out and ran into the street, his arms extended. He reached the woman just as a car swerved around them, the driver yelling obscenities out the window. Marcus wrapped his arm around the elderly woman's waist and guided her the rest of the way across the street, shielding her with his body from the other vehicles. When they reached the other side, the woman was trembling. Her breathing was shallow and fast. Marcus gently guided her to a nearby bench outside a closed coffee shop and helped her sit down. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle and concerned. "Take some deep breaths. You're safe now." The woman looked up at him with watery blue eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. I thought I was going to get hit. My legs don't move as fast as they used to, and I got confused about how much time I had." "It's okay," Marcus said, sitting down beside her. "You're safe. Just breathe." They sat in silence for a moment while the woman caught her breath. Marcus noticed her hands were shaking. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small bottle of water he always kept with him. He handed it to her. "Here, drink this. It'll help." The woman accepted the water gratefully and took a small sip. "You didn't have to do that," she said after a moment. "Stop your car like that. Most people would have just kept driving." Marcus shrugged. "My mama raised me right. You help people when they need help. That's just how it is." The woman smiled faintly. "What's your name, young man?" "Marcus." "Marcus Thompson. Well, Marcus Thompson, I'm Eleanor Whitmore, and I think you just saved my life." They talked for another 15 minutes. Eleanor told him about her late husband, her 3 children who were all busy with their own lives and didn't visit much, and her morning routine of walking to the local library to volunteer and read to children. Marcus told her about James, about his struggles as a single father, about the dreams he had for his son but wasn't sure he could afford. Eleanor listened intently, asking questions, genuinely interested in his story. There was something warm about her, something grandmotherly that made Marcus feel safe enough to open up about his struggles. When it was time for Marcus to leave, Eleanor reached into her large purse and pulled out a business card. It was old and worn, the edges frayed. The card simply read, "Eleanor Whitmore," and a phone number written in blue ink. "Call me if you ever need anything," she said. "I know that might sound strange from a stranger, but I don't give my number to just anyone." "There's something about you, Marcus. Something good. I'd like to stay in touch." Marcus took the card and smiled. "I'll call you," he said. "And maybe I can help you cross the street again sometime if you need it." Eleanor laughed, a soft, musical sound. "That would be nice." Marcus drove home thinking about the encounter. It had been unusual, but in a good way. He'd done something kind and it had felt right. He showed the card to James when he picked him up from school. "Who's Eleanor?" James asked, looking at the card with childlike curiosity. "She's someone I helped today," Marcus said. "A nice lady who needed help crossing the street. Are you going to call her?" James asked. Marcus looked at the card, then at his son. "Maybe, we'll see." But Marcus didn't call. Life got busy. Construction jobs came and went. He worked double shifts when he could. James had a soccer game that Marcus was saving to pay for. The card sat on Marcus's nightstand, and he would see it sometimes before going to bed. But he never picked up the phone. 3 weeks later, Marcus was working at a construction site in downtown Memphis when his phone rang. It was the elementary school. James had gotten sick and needed to be picked up. Marcus immediately left work, losing out on 4 hours of pay that he desperately needed. He drove to the school, picked up James, and took him home. James had a fever of 102 degrees. Marcus didn't have health insurance, so he couldn't take James to the doctor. Instead, he stayed home with him, checking his temperature every hour, giving him water, cooling him down with cold washcloths. He called his supervisor and said he wouldn't be able to work for a few days. By that evening, Marcus had burned through most of his carefully rationed grocery budget buying medicine and juice and soft foods for James. His truck needed an oil change that he couldn't afford. The rent was due in 5 days and he was short by $400. He sat on the edge of his bed after James had fallen asleep and felt the weight of everything pressing down on him. This was his life now, one crisis after another. 1 step forward, 2 steps back, always struggling, always barely holding on. He looked at Eleanor's card sitting on the nightstand and remembered her words. "Call me if you ever need anything." But how could he call a stranger he'd met once for help? That wasn't what the offer had meant. She was being nice. She didn't really expect him to need her. Still, as he lay in bed that night, unable to sleep because his mind was racing with financial worry, Marcus couldn't help but think about that moment on Madison Avenue. He'd helped Eleanor without expecting anything in return. He'd done it because it was the right thing to do. What if asking for help was also the right thing to do? At 2 a.m, Marcus picked up his phone and looked at Eleanor's number. His finger hovered over the dial button. He was terrified. What if she didn't answer? What if she did answer and he didn't know what to say? What if asking for help ruined the pure goodness of what had happened between them? But he thought about James, sleeping in the next room with a fever. He thought about the rent that was due. He thought about how much longer he could keep doing this alone. Marcus took a deep breath and dialed Eleanor's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. He was about to hang up when a sleepy voice answered. "Hello?" "Hi, Eleanor," Marcus said, his voice shaking slightly. "It's Marcus. Marcus Thompson, the guy who helped you cross the street. I'm sorry to call so late. I know it's 2 a.m, but I needed to talk to someone." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Eleanor's voice came back, fully awake now. "Marcus, honey, what's wrong?" "Are you okay?" That question, asked with such genuine concern, broke something open inside Marcus. He found himself telling her everything. About James being sick, about the rent, about the truck, about how tired he was of fighting, about how sometimes he didn't think he could keep going. Eleanor listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Marcus, I want you to do something for me. I want you to come to my house tomorrow. Bring James. My address is 3847 Poplar Avenue. It's a big white house with a black gate. Do you know where that is?" "I think so," Marcus said. "But Eleanor, I can't." "You can," she interrupted gently. "You helped me." "Let me help you. Please, Marcus, I'm asking." Something in her voice made him agree. After they hung up, Marcus sat in the darkness of his apartment, Eleanor's address written on a piece of paper in his hand, wondering what tomorrow would bring. Wondering if asking for help would be the beginning of something different. Wondering if kindness really could change a life. Little did he know that the next day would set in motion a series of events that would transform everything. That Eleanor Whitmore was not just a woman he'd helped cross the street, but a person with secrets of her own. Secrets that would change Marcus's life forever. The next morning, Marcus dressed James in his best clean clothes and drove to the address Eleanor had given him. His stomach was in knots the entire drive. He didn't know why he was going. He didn't know what Eleanor wanted. He just knew that he couldn't afford to ignore a lifeline, even if he wasn't sure what he was walking into. As he turned onto Poplar Avenue, Marcus's eyes widened. The homes here were massive, not just big, but palatial. They had manicured lawns and sprawling driveways and gates that probably cost more than Marcus made in a year. These weren't just houses. They were monuments to wealth and success. The kind of neighborhood that felt like a different world entirely from where Marcus lived. He found number 3847 and pulled up to the black gate Eleanor had mentioned. The house beyond was a two-story white colonial mansion surrounded by perfectly trimmed hedges and flowering gardens. It was beautiful and imposing and made Marcus feel incredibly small. He pressed the intercom button and Eleanor's voice crackled through almost immediately. "Marcus, is that you?" "Yeah, it's me," he said. "With James." "Wonderful. Come on through. The gate's opening now." The black gate swung open silently and Marcus drove through. He parked the truck in the circular driveway and helped James out. The boy looked up at the massive house with wide eyes. "Wow," James whispered. "Is this where Eleanor lives?" "I think so," Marcus said, taking his son's hand. Before they could reach the front door, Eleanor appeared on the porch. She was dressed in a lovely lavender dress and pearls, her white hair perfectly styled. She looked different from the terrified elderly woman on the street corner. She looked strong. She looked confident. She looked like someone used to having authority and respect. "Marcus." "James, welcome, welcome." She descended the steps slowly but steadily, her cane clicking against the stone. "Come inside. I've prepared breakfast." The inside of the house was just as impressive as the outside. High ceilings, crystal chandeliers, artwork on the walls that looked like it belonged in a museum. Marcus felt completely out of place, like he'd wandered into a movie set about people who lived very different lives than he did. Eleanor led them to an enormous kitchen with stainless steel appliances and granite countertops. The breakfast spread was incredible. There were pancakes, bacon, eggs, fresh fruit, pastries, and fresh squeezed orange juice. James's eyes went as wide as saucers. Marcus couldn't remember the last time he'd seen this much food, let alone been invited to eat it. "Please sit," Eleanor said, gesturing to the table. "Eat as much as you'd like." They ate breakfast together and Eleanor asked James about school, his favorite subjects, his friends, his dreams. The boy opened up to her naturally, telling her everything. Marcus watched the interaction with wonder. James was starving for adult attention and affection, and Eleanor provided it effortlessly. After breakfast, Eleanor asked Marcus to walk with her through the house while James watched cartoons in the living room. As they walked through rooms filled with expensive furniture and family photographs, Eleanor began to tell her story. "My husband, Robert, passed away 12 years ago," she said, stopping in front of a portrait of a handsome man in a suit. "We had a very good life together. He was a businessman, very successful. When he died, he left me quite comfortable financially. More than comfortable, actually. He left me very, very wealthy." Marcus wasn't sure what to say, so he just listened. "We had 3 children." Eleanor continued, moving to another photograph showing 3 adults standing together. Margaret, Robert Jr., and Catherine. They're all grown now, married, with their own lives. They live in different states. Margaret is in New York. Robert Jr. is in Los Angeles. Catherine is in Chicago. They visit occasionally, but they're busy with their own families and their own lives. I don't blame them. That's what you do when you grow up and have your own families. Eleanor led Marcus into a study lined with books and sat down in a leather chair. "Marcus, I'm 87 years old. I've had a good long life. I've been blessed beyond measure. But I've also watched my children become so focused on making money and climbing social ladders that they forgot what really matters. They forgot about kindness. They forgot about compassion. They forgot about looking out for people who are struggling." She looked at Marcus intently. "When you helped me that day on the street, when you risked your own safety to help a stranger, you reminded me of why those qualities matter. You reminded me of the man your father probably was. You reminded me of who my husband was before the money and success changed him." "Eleanor, I'm not sure what you're getting at," Marcus said carefully. "I want to help you." Eleanor said simply, "I want to help you and James, not with a handout. I'm not that kind of woman. I want to help you rebuild your life. I want to invest in you." Over the next few hours, Eleanor laid out a plan. She had connections in construction. She knew the owner of one of the biggest construction companies in Memphis. She was going to recommend Marcus for a foreman position. The job paid $70,000 a year, included health insurance, and came with steady work year-round. No more working 2 jobs. No more barely scraping by. Marcus was stunned. "Eleanor, I can't." "You can," she said firmly. "And you will." I'm calling my friend today. He owes me a favor. He'll hire you. All you have to do is show up and do good work, which I know you will. Eleanor also helped Marcus enroll James in a better school, one that had a strong academic program and tutoring support. She helped him find a better apartment in a safer neighborhood. She didn't give him money directly, but she used her connections and her influence to open doors that had been firmly closed to him before. Over the next several weeks, Marcus's life transformed. He started his new job as a foreman and discovered he was good at it. He was good at managing people, solving problems, and making sure projects ran smoothly. His boss, Gerald Martinez, took him under his wing and taught him the business side of construction. Marcus was building a real career, not just surviving job to job. James thrived in his new school. He was making friends and getting good grades. He joined the soccer team, which had been a dream of his. Marcus was able to attend every game, cheering from the sidelines. For the first time in his life, James had stability. He had security. He had hope. Eleanor became a regular part of their lives. She would visit Marcus's new apartment on weekends, bringing James books and helping him with his homework. She took them out to dinner. She came to James's soccer games. She became the grandmother figure that James had never had, and Marcus felt a deep, genuine friendship developing with her. One evening, about 2 months after that first visit to Eleanor's house, Eleanor asked Marcus to sit down with her in his small living room. "I want to tell you something," she said. "Something I haven't told anyone except my lawyer." Marcus's stomach tightened. He didn't know what was coming, but something in Eleanor's tone told him it was important. "I'm sick," Eleanor said quietly. "I have stage 3 cancer. I've been receiving treatment, but my doctors have told me that I probably have about a year left, maybe a bit longer if I'm lucky." Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. "Eleanor, I'm so sorry." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want pity," she said firmly. "I wanted friendship. I wanted to know that the help I was giving you was genuine, and that your friendship with me was genuine too. And it is. I can see it." She paused, then continued. "Marcus, I've made some changes to my will. I've left most of my estate to my children, but I've also left something for you and James. Not just money, though there is that. I've set up a trust fund for James's education, enough to pay for college and graduate school if he wants it. And I've left you some investments and property that should generate enough income for you to be financially secure for the rest of your life." Marcus couldn't speak. He was overwhelmed. "Eleanor, you can't—" "I can't accept. You can and you will," Eleanor said, taking his hand. "You helped me when you had nothing to give. You showed me that kindness still exists in this world. You've become like the son I always wished I had. This is what I want to do. This is what makes me happy. Please let me do this." In the following months, Eleanor's health declined, but during that time, Marcus was there for her every single day. He helped her with her medical appointments. He sat with her during her treatments. He held her hand when she was in pain. And in return, she gave him and James love and security, and a future that had seemed impossible just months before. Eleanor passed away peacefully in her sleep on a cold January morning, with Marcus and James sleeping in chairs beside her bed. At her funeral, attended by her 3 children and extended family, Marcus delivered a eulogy that moved everyone to tears. He talked about Eleanor's kindness, her wisdom, her generosity, and her belief that people could change each other's lives with a single act of compassion. But the real transformation was just beginning. Because when Eleanor's will was read, shocking revelations emerged that no one had anticipated. Secrets that Eleanor had kept hidden her entire life. Secrets that would challenge everything Marcus thought he knew about this remarkable woman and would change his understanding of what she had truly given him. The reading of Eleanor's will took place on a gray February afternoon in the downtown offices of Whitmore and Associates, a prestigious law firm that had been handling the Whitmore family's legal affairs for decades. Eleanor's 3 children sat on one side of the mahogany table. Marcus sat on the other side, with a lawyer assigned to represent his interests. He felt completely out of place, surrounded by wealth and legality and the weight of inheritance. Eleanor's longtime lawyer, Mr. William Ashford, a man in his 70s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, opened the leather folder containing Eleanor's will. He began reading through the standard legal language, distributing the bulk of Eleanor's estate to her 3 children. Margaret received the house on Poplar Avenue and several investment properties. Robert Jr. received a large portfolio of stocks and bonds. Catherine received jewelry, art, and cash. The three siblings sat with expressions ranging from satisfied to disappointed as they calculated their windfalls. But then Mr. Ashford paused and looked directly at Marcus. "There is one more beneficiary," Mr. Ashford said.
"And one final letter from Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore that she asked me to read aloud in the presence of all parties." Eleanor's children exchanged confused glances.
Margaret leaned forward. "Who?" "We don't have any other relatives." Mr. Ashford opened an envelope sealed with Eleanor's initials and began to read in a clear, formal voice. The letter was addressed to Marcus, but Eleanor had requested that it be read aloud in front of her family. "My dearest Marcus," the letter began. "If you're hearing this, then I have passed on to whatever comes next. But before I go, I want you to know the truth about who I really was and why I chose to help you." Marcus felt his heart racing. He didn't know what was coming, but something told him this would be important. Eleanor's letter continued. 46 years ago, I had a son. His name was David. He was born to me and Robert when I was just 19 years old, before Robert and I were married. We were young and foolish, and we thought we could keep the baby and somehow make it work. But our families pressured us. His family said the shame would ruin them. My family said I had to give the baby up for adoption or be cut off completely. We were weak. We gave into that pressure. We gave our son up for adoption. Marcus listened in stunned silence as Eleanor's children gasped and started whispering to each other. For 46 years, Eleanor's letter continued. I carried the guilt of that decision. I wondered about my son. I wondered who he became. I wondered if he was happy, if he was loved, if he knew that I had loved him even though I couldn't be his mother. I wondered if one day our paths might cross and I would somehow recognize him. Eleanor's daughter, Catherine, interrupted. This is ridiculous. I've never heard anything about a brother. Mother, what is this? Mr. Ashford held up a hand and continued reading. When Marcus helped me cross the street, Eleanor's letter went on. Something shifted in my heart. I saw the goodness in him, the kindness, the strength despite his struggles. I saw a man raising his son alone, doing everything right, sacrificing everything, just as I had wished someone had done for my own son. And I started to wonder. I hired a private investigator, the letter said. I asked him to look into Marcus Thompson's background, his birth records, his adoption history. What I discovered changed my entire understanding of my life. Marcus was born in Memphis 43 years ago. He was adopted at 6 months old by a couple named Thomas and Patricia Thompson. Those names meant nothing to me until the investigator found more information. Patricia Thompson was my cousin's daughter, someone I hadn't seen in decades. When I researched further, when I looked at the adoption records that had been sealed but that my lawyer was able to access with proper legal authorization, I discovered something that took my breath away. The adoption agency had documented my information. I was his biological mother. The room erupted. Margaret stood up. This is impossible. This is a lie. Mr. Ashford continued reading over the commotion. Marcus, I know this is a shock. I also know that I should have told you the truth while I was alive. But I was afraid. I was afraid that you would think I was trying to manipulate you. I was afraid that you would reject me. I was afraid that the kindness we developed would be tainted by obligation. So I made the decision to help you because I genuinely believed you deserved help, and I did it without expecting anything in return. The fact that you were my son was a bonus that I kept to myself. I have never been more proud of who you became than I am now. The letter continued. You are exactly the man I always hoped my son would be. You are strong and kind and good. You love your son with everything you have, just as I loved you, even from a distance. I want you to know that our meeting wasn't an accident. There are no accidents. There is only fate and kindness and people being exactly where they need to be. Eleanor's letter then outlined the specific bequests. To Marcus Thompson, my biological son, I leave the following. The investment portfolio currently valued at approximately $3 million. The commercial property on Main Street that generates $200,000 per year in rental income. And most importantly, I leave you my love, my pride, and my hope that you will use these resources to help others the way you have helped me. The letter concluded. To my 3 children, I know this will be a shock, and I know some of you may feel betrayed or hurt. But I ask you to understand that I made a decision when I was young that haunted me for 46 years. I've tried to make amends with that decision by helping a man who deserved help. I hope you can find it in your hearts to understand. I have left each of you substantial inheritances. I hope that is enough. Love, Mother." The room fell silent. Marcus felt like the world was spinning. $3 million. Commercial property. Eleanor was his mother. The woman he had come to love as a friend and mentor was actually his biological mother. He had spent the last several months with his own mother without knowing it. Eleanor's 3 children reacted in various ways. Margaret was angry, claiming Eleanor had betrayed the family by keeping such a secret. Robert Jr. was more philosophical, saying he understood their mother's desire to help someone in need. Catherine sat quietly processing the information, but they didn't contest the will. Legally, they couldn't. Eleanor had been of sound mind when she made her changes. She had been clear and intentional. The will was ironclad. Over the following weeks, Marcus had to process an enormous amount of information. He learned about Eleanor's life, her marriage to Robert, her struggles with the decision to give him up. He learned about the investigations she'd conducted to find him. He learned about the years she'd spent wondering about him. Marcus also made contact with the adoption agency and was eventually able to find information about his adoptive parents, Thomas and Patricia Thompson. They had loved him fiercely and raised him with values and kindness. They had passed away years ago, but Marcus was grateful for them. They had been his real parents in every way that mattered. But Eleanor had given him something too. She had given him genes and characteristics. She had given him his love of helping others. She had given him, in the end, security and a future for his son. With the inheritance, Marcus's life transformed completely. He paid off all his debts. He bought a beautiful home for himself and James in a neighborhood with good schools. He established a scholarship fund in Eleanor's name at Memphis State University. He started his own construction company, hiring people like himself who had faced hardship and struggled to find opportunities. Within 5 years, the company employed over 100 people and was known for its commitment to giving second chances to those who needed them. James thrived. He graduated from high school with honors and went on to college on a combination of Eleanor's scholarship fund and academic scholarships. He became an engineer, following in the footsteps of his great-grandfather Robert, Eleanor's husband. Marcus was incredibly proud. On the day of James's college graduation, Marcus took his son to Eleanor's grave in Elmwood Cemetery. They brought flowers, and Marcus told James the full story of Eleanor. Not just what she had done for them, but who she really was. James cried as he learned that the woman he had come to love as a grandmother was actually his biological great-grandmother. "Do you think she knew?" James asked. "That someday I would graduate from college?" "I think she hoped for it," Marcus said. "I think she dreamed about it. I think that's why she helped us in the first place. She saw potential in us, and she wanted to give us the chance to reach it." Years later, when James had children of his own, he would tell them the story of Eleanor. He would tell them about the day his grandfather helped an elderly woman cross the street. He would tell them about kindness and fate and how one moment of compassion can change the entire trajectory of a life. And Marcus, now in his 60s, would look back on that morning on Madison Avenue in Memphis and understand that it was the most important moment of his life, not because of the money, not because of the inheritance, but because a frightened old woman had seen a good man and a good man had seen someone who needed help. And in that moment of human connection, something magical had happened. Eleanor had given Marcus the gift of belonging. She had given him the knowledge that his existence mattered to someone. She had given him the chance,